You're listening to episode 13 of Literacy in Color. Welcome to the Literacy in Color podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Sullivan, a science of reading advocate with over a decade of experience as a reading interventionist and literacy coach. I'm passionate about making evidence-based instruction both effective and engaging. If you're interested in captivating our learners on reading fluently and understanding language, or as I like to call it, keeping it colorful, then you've found the right place. Each week, we'll explore intriguing lit bits and practical strategies around the science of reading and structured literacy to help you be colorful and teach colorfully. Are you ready to bring literacy to life? Let's color outside the lines and make an impact together. Hey everyone! I'm so excited to dive into today's episode where we're tackling a topic that has sparked considerable interest over the last few years, and for a good reason: structured literacy. So first things first, while the science of reading and structured literacy are closely related terms, they're not synonymous. The science of reading is a body of research that helps us understand how reading develops, while structured literacy is the practical way we apply that research in our teaching. So what is structured literacy? How is it different from balanced literacy? And why is it so effective? Let's unpack all of that in today's episode. First, what exactly is structured literacy? The term structured literacy was officially coined by the International Dyslexia Association, known as the IDA, fairly recently actually, in 2016. It's become an umbrella term to bring together various evidence-based methods like Orton-Gillingham, as well as other systematic approaches, all under one comprehensive framework. So while the name is on the newer side, the principles behind structured literacy have been around for about a century. Back in the 1920s, Dr. Samuel T. Orton and Anna Gillingham, they developed the Orton-Gillingham method. The Orton-Gillingham approach was groundbreaking at the time, especially for students with dyslexia, because it emphasized explicit, systematic, phonics-based, multisensory instruction. And over time, this method has become accepted as a well-rounded, research-backed approach that benefits all learners. But just for the record, OG is not the only structured literacy approach out there. So let's talk about some guiding principles, how we teach under a structured literacy approach. Structured literacy is anchored by a set of guiding principles that ensure literacy success for all students. These guiding principles are that it's systematic, cumulative, explicit, and diagnostic. So let's talk about each one. Systematic and cumulative. I'll bunch these two together. Systematic means it follows a system. Instruction is carefully planned and organized, following a logical sequence that progresses from simple to complex concepts. Think of it like building a house. You wouldn't start with the roof before laying a strong foundation. The strong foundation needs to come first. For example, we lay the groundwork with basic skills like working on CVC words, such as cat and pig, before we're moving on to more complex multisyllabic words like rainbow and firefighter. This differs from guided reading, where we may have haphazardly picked out some phonics skills at random for word work without a clear roadmap. We say that structured literacy is also cumulative because this systematic sequence builds on what was previously taught. New lessons not only reinforce, but also deepen understanding. And by consistently reviewing and building on what's been taught, we create a cumulative knowledge base that supports long-term retention and mastery. New knowledge always wants something existing to stick to. So when we're providing cumulative instruction, imagine sticking just another piece of the puzzle together. Now let's chat explicit instruction. Nothing is left to chance in structured literacy. Teachers provide clear, direct explanations and model concepts in detail. This ensures that students understand precisely what they need to learn. We remove the guesswork. That's not to say we can't ask students thought-provoking questions or ever use inquiry. The caveat is that even with the questions or inquiry, we are still directly teaching our students rather than assuming they'll perhaps construct new knowledge. For example, when teaching students new phonics skills, educators don't merely expose children to words and hope they figure out the phonics patterns on their own. They'll say, IGH spells the long I sound. Then, of course, structured literacy is diagnostic. It's highly responsive to students' needs. Teachers continuously monitor progress through informal observations and formal assessments, tailoring instruction to support students along their learning journeys. If a student struggles with a specific skill, we adjust our approach, offering targeted feedback and additional practice until the skill becomes automatic. And ultimately, we know that achieving automaticity in word recognition is so important because it allows students to focus their cognitive energy on comprehension and more complex thinking work. This is also why I'm a huge proponent of building teacher knowledge around the science of reading research. A solid curriculum can be a great asset in rolling out content systematically and cumulatively and explicitly. However, it's a responsive teacher, a well-informed teacher, who can make instruction diagnostic. Sometimes we need to make on-the-spot decisions and consider the art of teaching that isn't always provided for us in a boxed program. So by combining these principles, systematic and cumulative instruction, explicit teaching, diagnostic responsiveness, and hey, even a splash of multisensory engagement, structured literacy provides a framework that meets the needs of all learners, setting them up for reading and writing proficiency. Now, structured literacy isn't just about the how, it's also about what we teach. These elements include phonology, orthography, morphology, syntax, and semantics. Instruction is designed with intentionality, giving students a thorough and practical understanding of how our language system works. So first, phonology. Phonology has that Greek form, phon, meaning sound. It's the study of the sound patterns in language. Before students ever pick up a book or start reading words, we want to develop their awareness around the sound patterns in our language. We can work with larger sound units like words and syllables under the umbrella of phonological awareness, or we can work with the smallest units of sound in our language, phonemes, within the realm of phonemic awareness. Next up, orthography. We have the Greek forms O-R-T-H-O, meaning correct, proper, straight, and G-R-A-P-H, meaning something written. The proper writing system for our sounds, the conventions of our spelling system. Think alphabetic principle and phonics here, learning about spelling patterns and the way letters and letter combinations represent different sounds. In structured literacy, we explicitly teach these sound-symbol relationships. In letters training, and I believe in the book Uncovering the Logic of English, we learn that 50% of English words are predictable based on the sound spelling correspondences alone, and another 36% of the more common words are almost predictable except for one sound. It's usually the vowel sound. So this leaves us with a whopping 86% of words that can be read or spelled fairly reliably when we consider letter-sound correspondences. If we take other information into consideration, such as the language of origin, etymology, or word meaning, morphology, that can also quote-unquote explain away these seeming irregularities. So this leads us to our third element of structured literacy, morphology. We have that Greek form, M-O-R-P-H, meaning form or shape. Morphology dives into the structure of words, exploring how words are formed with prefixes, suffixes, and base elements. Teaching morphology not only enhances word recognition, but it deepens vocabulary knowledge and syntactic awareness, which leads us to our fourth element, syntax. We have that Greek combining form, S-Y-N, meaning together, and T-A-X, that's related to tactics, arrangements. So syntax deals with the systematic arrangement of words and sentences. Think sentence structure, grammar. we not only teach our students how words combine to form coherent and meaningful sentences, but also the rules that govern our system. And of course, understanding syntax improves both reading comprehension and written expression. And finally, we have semantics. SEM is related to meaning or significance. Semantics is all about meaning, understanding that whole words, whole sentences, or even what a larger text conveys. We know that the science of reading is not just phonics. Learning how to decode is not enough. We need to build vocabulary and develop an understanding of how words interact with one another on a page. So these elements, of course, don't work in isolation. They overlap and reinforce one another. And the best part is, structured literacy benefits all students, not just those who struggle with reading. So by offering a structured approach to literacy and ultimately language, we're empowering every learner with an opportunity to lead literate lives. So now that we know the guiding principles and key components behind structured literacy, it's time to bust out the Venn diagram. How does this approach differ from balanced literacy? The key features of a balanced literacy classroom are reading workshop, which can also include small group models like guided reading. We'd have interactive read aloud, shared reading, word study, writing workshop, and interactive writing. Within a balanced literacy approach, though, we may see things like beginning readers memorizing and guessing words in predictable texts, leveled libraries, the use of MSV, and an emphasis on meaning. While it emphasizes exposure to books and reading volume, it often lacks the systematic, cumulative, and explicit instruction that readers need to build a solid foundation, especially for our striving readers. So, for example, a balanced literacy approach might encourage students to use picture cues or context to guess words. Structured literacy, on the other hand, ensures students have the skills to decode words based on phonics patterns. No guessing required. Some teachers may say, but I've always taught phonics, even within a balanced literacy approach. And this may very well be true. However, think about the guiding principles of structured literacy again. I want you to reflect on your foundational skill instruction. Was it systematic, cumulative, explicit, diagnostic? And if yes, okay, but then how did students practice these new skills? What did they read? If they didn't have reading materials to match the foundational skills they were learning, how can we ensure mastery of those skills? Wiley Blevins tells us it's in the application the learning sticks. I find that even in balanced literacy classrooms who, quote, still taught phonics, they lacked in the application piece. Our district, too, always taught phonics whole group, always. There was never a time we weren't teaching the code. We have always had a phonics program that was separate from the reading workshop block. However, so many of our beginning readers would be indefinitely stuck at levels A, B, and C because we weren't giving them enough opportunity to practice the phonics skills they were learning. And their reading materials and our expectations weren't matching what their brains were actually grappling with. So while some argue that balanced literacy builds a love of reading, it can leave many students behind, especially those with dyslexia or other reading challenges. Structured literacy bridges that gap, providing all students with the tools they need to succeed. Of course, it sounds like a beautiful philosophy to give students exposure to books and encourage reading volume to build up readers. However, if students never learn to lift words off the page, we can't expect them to soar. If you've never seen Nancy Young's Ladder of Reading, I'll link it in the show notes. She breaks down that for 5 to 10% of our student population, reading seems effortless. These are likely the kiddos who flourished just fine with a balanced literacy approach. Then for 35 to 40% of the population, reading still is relatively easy, although they still likely would need explicit literacy instruction. However, for 40 to 45% of the population, learning to read requires code-based and explicit instruction. This is almost half of our learners. Then another 10 to 15% of the population, learning to read is even more of a challenge. I'm thinking of our students with dyslexia here. They not only need code-based and explicit instruction, but they also need intensive instruction and frequent repetition. Now, some critics argue that explicit instruction might feel like drill and kill, but research doesn't support this. To me, this sentiment is actually just an adult opinion, assuming foundational skill work is boring, because as literate adults, they've already mastered the code. In fact, many struggling readers discover a genuine love for reading when they start experiencing success. Think about it. When kids learn how to decode words efficiently and understand the text they're reading, they become more engaged and motivated. Yes, it's important for students to enjoy beautiful literature and have opportunities to write creatively on any topics of their choosing. But these experiences are far more meaningful when they have the skills to do so confidently. This is exactly why a highly explicit, systematic, and diagnostic approach to teaching literacy that works for all students is important. And it's absolutely essential for those with dyslexia and other learning challenges. This method isn't just about giving some kids a leg up. It's about creating a structured and intentional path to reading success for every child. Structured literacy is so effective because of its alignment with the science of reading. Research has shown that reading is not a natural process. While spoken language develops naturally through being immersed in language, reading requires deliberate, explicit, systematic teaching. Structured literacy meets this need by breaking down the reading process and teaching it in a way that makes sense. So to wrap up, structured literacy is a proven, research-based approach that equips students with the skills they need to become proficient readers. It's organized, intentional, rooted in the science of reading. And by providing teachers with proper training and resources, we can reach a much wider range of students. Structured literacy doesn't leave learning to chance or assume that students will naturally infer how to read and write by osmosis just by being around print-rich environments and beautiful literature. Instead, skills are broken down, modeled, and directly explained to ensure students have a clear understanding. As you reflect on today's episode, think about what small shifts you can make to incorporate the principles of structured literacy into your work, or think about the things that you're already doing. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode has given you a deeper understanding of what structured literacy is and why it's so impactful. Together, we can make a difference, one reader at a time, and structured literacy gives us the roadmap to make that happen. Thank you so much for tuning into Literacy in Color. I hope today's episode left you feeling both inspired and equipped with something new to add to your teaching toolkit. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would truly mean so much to me if you'd leave a 5-star review. It helps other educators find the show and join our colorful community. And don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For more tips, tools, and resources, be sure to check out the links in the show notes at michelleandthecolorfulclassroom.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week. Until then, be colorful and teach colorfully.